This week on ANN, Adventists in Lebanon are assessing the damage after a blast in the capital city of Beirut.
The dean of the Loma Linda University School of Pharmacy appointed to the COVID-19 vaccine work group.
And more than 12,000 young people gather for a digital evangelism event in Peru.
These stories and more coming up.
Thanks so much for joining us this week.
At least 100 people are dead and thousands injured after an explosion that was felt more than 150 miles away rocked the city of Beirut, Lebanon on August 4. Those numbers are expected to rise.
The Middle East and North African Union, or MENA, reports that while all of its employees are safe, multiple churches, the Middle Eastern University, and several secondary schools have reported damage.
President of MENA, Rick McEdwards, said to ANN in an email, "Our hearts go out to the people of Lebanon who have already experienced much hardship over the last few months. We are committed to helping do what we can to bring hope to people during this time of difficulty."
President of the Global Seventh-day Adventist Church, Ted N.C. Wilson, asked for prayers for those in Beirut. He said, "I've prayed for our church members in Lebanon and for the country. It is a tragedy that has happened on top of the many challenges they already face. Having grown up in the Middle East and having lived for some months in Beirut, Lebanon, my heart is heavy for the people of that country and their situation. Please lift up the precious people of Lebanon in prayer that God will help them in time of need and that our church will be able to assist people as Christ did and more readily share Christ, his righteousness, his three angels' messages, and his soon second coming."
The Adventist Church in MENA is working on assessing the damage, and we will report more as more information is made available.
In the United States, public health officials are diligently working to facilitate the timely development of safe and effective vaccines against COVID-19. Dean of the Loma Linda University School of Pharmacy, Michael HOGUE, is one of 45 healthcare professionals who have been appointed by the Centers for Disease Control and Infection to an advisory committee on immunization practices work group on the COVID-19 vaccine. The work group has been meeting once a week since April to discuss the efficacy of potential vaccines against the novel coronavirus, as well as policy surrounding the distribution of the vaccine. HOGUE says, "Our task is to evaluate the scientific evidence behind COVID-19 vaccines and make recommendations to the ACIP on the use of them. The ACIP will then determine to modify and or accept those recommendations to the director of the CDC, who will ultimately make the decision on the official vaccine policies." Other members of the work group include representatives from the Food and Drug Administration, Health and Human Services, and medical experts and physicians from across the nation. HOGUE, who also serves as the president of the American Pharmacists Association, is the only pharmacist in the work group. HOGUE says it has been an enlightening experience working with experts who have been researching coronaviruses for over 30 years. It should be reassuring to the American public that there is a group of independent health experts who are dedicated and focused on making the best recommendations that would meet the needs of our society.
Neither COVID-19 pandemic or social isolation managed to quench the creativity and enthusiasm of the more than 12,000 Adventist young people who participated in a digital evangelism campaign totally online in northern Peru. The Caleb campaign, called A Voice of Hope, is the first virtual evangelistic effort in the region. During the week of July 25 to August 1, more than 4,000 video conference rooms were open simultaneously, flooding the internet every night. Gathered in these rooms were thousands of Bible students, family members, neighbors, co-workers, and guests of the Caleb team members who shared moments of praise, prayer, and evangelistic message. In addition, as part of the Evangelism Week activities, each Caleb team was encouraged to deliver a basic food kit to the participants who were in need because of the pandemic. As a result of this effort, more than 10,000 people benefited in the midst of the pandemic. In spite of the virtual environment, the Caleb still promoted human interaction among participants. On Sabbath, August 1, as part of the project programming, baptisms were held in the different regions of northern Peru. They closely followed the health protocols of each region. In the afternoon, there was a celebration program broadcast on Facebook and YouTube.
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, in Colombia is helping hundreds of Venezuelan migrants who are making their way back to their country on foot after losing their jobs in Colombia due to the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. According to the latest Colombia migration report of April 2020, more than 80,000 Venezuelans have returned home out of the more than 1.8 million spread across Colombia. ADRA Colombia has set up their Adventist mobile unit in highways and strategic points in cities like Bogota, Medellin, Bucaramanga, and Cúcuta, where many travelers stop on the way to the northern border with Venezuela. The Adventist Mobile Unit, which is a joint project with ADRA International, ADRA Colombia, and USAID, is staffed by a nurse, a pre-hospital care professional, a nurse's assistant, and a social worker. The unit sees an average of 30 people per day. Most of the patients the mobile unit staff tend to are suffering with trauma from the long journey on foot. They also struggle with blood pressure issues, body pain, asthma, and being underweight. The mobile clinic also helps a large amount of pregnant women. The Adventist Mobile Unit has also provided primary care in cities like Medellin and Bucaramanga for cases that require an appointment and more intensive medical care, lab work, and medicines prescribed by a physician. Since May 2020, more than 1,500 Venezuelans have been helped free of cost by the Adventist Mobile Unit as they travel to the border with Venezuela. The Emergency Medical Response Project is scheduled to end in mid-November, but ADRA leaders are requesting an extension without cost to donors so that more individuals can be helped.
The Advent Health System is using the OmniX chair to improve the condition of vertigo patients with debilitating dizziness.
And groundbreaking technology by Transmedics makes possible the transplantation of donor hearts that are no longer beating.
Advent Health's Tom Johnson brings us these stories.
Everything going on in the world right now can be dizzying. For some who have bouts of vertigo, the world can literally seem to be spinning out of control. Just before COVID-19 hit, we checked out a wild-looking therapy that is spinning vertigo sufferers straight to relief.
All right.
The moment that eventually led Frank Dimovich to this wild-looking contraption at Advent Health Celebration
You dizzy?
happened 2 years ago.
I was sleeping and got up to go to the restroom, and all of a sudden I couldn't stand. Everything was spinning.
Frank had vertigo, and it kept going for days.
Everything was moving. You're sitting still, and the whole room goes around.
You okay?
I'm fine.
You might not think putting someone who suffers from debilitating attacks of dizziness into something that moves them around like this
Here it goes.
is good,
A good Disney ride.
but it does work. Vertigo is an inner ear problem dealing with crystals moving around in the ear canal. This OmniX chair induces vertigo. As they move Dimovich around, physical therapists Rachel Arabian and Carolina Meglio
Is the dizziness gone?
watch a monitor for something called nystagmus.
Nystagmus is a rapid involuntary eye movement.
Hey, eyes wide open for a second. You're not dizzy?
When nystagmus happens, they found the position which sets off Frank's vertigo. They reposition him and the crystals move back in place, stopping the vertigo, kind of like a
Reset button.
Well, it helps me. You know, I now probably won't have vertigo for a while, and maybe not at all for a year or so.
It's not that it's a cure, but it goes into remission. Here it goes.
It's a great Disney ride.
definitely worth the price of admission. Now to a story about an amazing leap forward for heart transplants at Advent Health. Our team bringing innovation to Central Florida, giving one man a new lease on life with what some call a heart in a box.
Which way are you going, left or right?
A walk down a hospital hall likely never seemed as important to George Martin as this one. This stroll comes just 5 days after an Advent Health transplant team gave him a new heart. The heart he was born with began failing in 2012 after a bout with swine flu.
It attacked my heart, it enlarged my heart, it wiped out the left side of my heart basically.
But the way George Martin got his new heart is very different. He even has a nickname for it.
The heart in the box.
Literally, that's it right there, being kept beating by a device called the Transmedics Organ Care System, one of only a handful in use in the U.S. And
this transplant is unique to Florida so far.
Dr. Don Bada and Dr. Scott Silvestri performed the transplant. Dr. Bada says this new system allows surgeons to use a heart even from a donor whose heart stopped.
We take the heart and we put it on the organ care system, and we're able to reanimate the heart.
Only about 1% of U.S. patients who need a heart transplant get one. This device offers the chance to increase the number of donor hearts available and keep more people like George Martin taking walks like this one.
I think this technology is a quantum leap for us to be able to help more patients.
It's just a blessing.
In Orlando, Tom Johnson for Advent Health.
Coming up, Adventists in the greater New York region reach out to their neighbors during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We'll be right back after the break.
We may look, pray, read, think, worship, sing, and share differently, but we all look forward to the Sabbath. And we all look forward to the future when Jesus will come again. With this message in mind, we arrived at a core component for a new identity system, the creation grid, a simple 7-column structure for layout. The grid is a reference both to the prophetic timeline as well as to the creation week that culminated in the 7th-day Sabbath. The first 6 columns of the grid belong to the designer. They can be filled with anything: text, images, illustrations, patterns, and logos. But the 7th column, the Sabbath column, does not belong to them. It is meant to be different and special. Regardless of what or where you are designing, you can always find information to help you communicate that we are all Seventh-day Adventists.
Welcome back. Recently, the Greater New York Conference held a convention for English ministries in the region.
During the convention, stories were shared of healing, praise, and comfort during the coronavirus shutdown. Although New York is opening up again, at one time, it was the epicenter of COVID-19 in the United States as virus cases soared.
In spite of this, Adventists in the region thrived through the pain and sadness, reaching those in their community with the hope of Christ and leading some to be baptized.
The Greater New York Conference sent this report of how the church's pastors and members worked during the COVID-19 pandemic.
What a difference a day makes. 4 months ago, it was a different story. We're in the heart of New York City, in Times Square, the city that never sleeps. And if you were to tell me 4 months ago that we would be on pause, sheltered in, and unable to come out and enjoy the Broadway shows, the fun and activities of New York City, I would have said, man, you probably lost your mind. But because of COVID-19, we were on pause and sheltered in. But here we are 4 months later as the city begins to reopen and we begin to enjoy New York City once again. And this is the beginning of our English Ministries Convention. I'd like to share with you stories of sadness, stories of hope, stories of healing, stories of God's deliverance as a result of COVID-19. I invite you to join us now as we go on this journey exploring what God has done for us in English Ministries over these 4 months. COVID-19 has not stopped ministry from taking place. Whether it's in the Bronx, Brooklyn, or on Long Island, Queens, or Manhattan, our churches have remained engaged in community services, ministering to the hearts and the lives of our people in a meaningful and tangible way during this challenging time. Thank you to all our churches that have sacrificed, and to all our members who have taken the time to come out of their homes and to go to the churches and to minister to the people in the community during this most challenging time of COVID-19.
We distribute to over 400 people in the community every week, which also include other churches that are in the area that we help with their distribution. It's a challenge. We have just about 15 volunteers that work with us every week. To God be the glory. I give God the glory because He had worked through us in that other people in the community can be blessed on a weekly basis. I just give God all the glory.
Heaven records your sacrifice, your commitment, and your dedication. And we in English Ministries say, thank you. Even during the time of COVID-19, the mask of sin has been removed and individuals have gone into the watery grave of baptism and have accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. From Brooklyn to Maranatha to the Bronx to Long Island, individuals have said yes to Jesus Christ.
My journey for conviction was not a normal one. I did not have the opportunity to be witness, but the righteous right hand of the Lord was pressing on me through supernatural power and prayer. That's what led me to be baptized. And not even COVID-19 could not have stopped me from baptized. And I feel the peace and love and joy every day of being baptized in the name of Jesus.
Preaching the Word of God has become so dynamic during COVID-19 by our pastors who have had to adapt to not being able to preach from a physical pulpit, but have had to preach from behind their computers to a screen and to your hearts and lives on the other side of the computer screen. We want to thank our pastors for their commitment to week after week preaching sermons that have been transformative and have been a source of encouragement to our people in English ministries during this time. The Word of God will not return unto him void. And so even though it's COVID and we have gone through this period, our English ministry still remains committed to evangelism and public ministry. Thank you to our lay leaders who have remained faithful to collaborate with their pastors and to make sure that our churches remain vibrant, remain engaged during this challenging time. It's hard to believe that the sanctuary has been empty of your physical presence for so long. Yes, it has been over 4 months since March of this year. I've used this time to do some personal reflection. I hope you have too. Reflected on your walk with God. I've also used this time to restore the broken relationships and as well as to restore my relationship with God. I hope you have too. Speaking about restoration, we're looking for the time when we will be able to restore the fellowship. We'll be able to sit with each other, sing with each other, pray with each other in the sanctuary. We have taken several steps to make sure that the sanctuary is prepared for your arrival. Several of our churches are meeting with their church boards and putting together plans for the reopening process. And we are happy to let you know that your safety is our number one priority. And so our churches will gradually reopen beginning the first Sabbath in August. Now that reopening process will look a little bit different from what you may think. No, we're not all just rushing back into the sanctuary. It will be kind of a hybrid experience. So yes, we'll worship in the sanctuary, but we'll also have that online experience. So all our churches in English ministries have been experiencing that Zoom relationship where you worship on Zoom, and we're so thankful that you have stayed faithful to that process and fellowship even on Zoom. But the process will be outlined, and we ask that you follow the guidelines as outlined by your church board and your pastor as we begin the reopening process. Things will look a little different. Church will feel a little bit different, but the spirit is still the same. We believe that greater things will be done post-COVID-19. We have the opportunity for a greater walk with God, a greater opportunity for evangelism, a greater opportunity to testify the fulfillment of scriptures. Oh, taste and see that the Lord has been, is, and will continue to be good to us, even in the midst of pain, sadness, and the suffering that we have experienced due to COVID-19. Our hearts go out to those who have suffered loss during this challenging time. Thank you for your faithfulness during COVID-19. You have remained faithful with your giving, with your support of the church during this time, and we want to let you know that heaven records your faithfulness, and we extend our appreciation for your faithfulness. So, get ready to come back into the fellowship of your brothers and sisters. Yes, there will be social distancing. Yes, there will be safety protocols. Yes, we will make sure that we do what is necessary to keep you safe. We need to have that experience once again. we can overcome the fear while still remaining safe and still putting our hope and trust in Jesus Christ. Thank you for all you do. God bless.
Coming up, we turn to David Trim for a look at This Week in Adventist History.
But up next, Adventist Mission shares a story of what can happen when we first minister to people with compassion.
Welcome back.
When Adventists first came to a small town in Romania, there weren't many Adventists.
But because they led with compassion and met the needs of the community, there now is a small church that shares Christ every week.
Adventist Mission has more.
When a friend asked me for a ride, something impressed me that I should bring my family along. While we were driving, a strong storm started that caused our wooden church building to collapse on top of my house. We thanked God that although our new Adventist church collapsed, by God's protection, no one was harmed. Just a few years ago, I was not an Adventist. I lived in an older house on this property that sits at the main intersection in town. In my community, there were some who struggled to find a hot meal in the winter. When Adventists first came, they brought food and compassion. A warm bowl of soup can be the perfect way into someone's heart. They parked a shipping container in my yard where they could serve food and connect with our people. Many of us felt they sincerely cared, so we listened to Bible stories that were filled with hope. Through their loving service, this group of Adventists won our hearts, and we trusted them. In time, some of us were baptized, and we built a wooden church next to my house. This is my house, where the church plant activities happened over the last 10 years. This is the foundation for the church we wanted to build. Unfortunately, it didn't last because it was destroyed during the storm. Over there, we had a shipping container. From it, we served hot meals during the winter for 4 to 5 years. In the beginning, most of the attendees were not Adventists. This is still somewhat true today. Only about half of the people who come for Sabbath services are baptized members. The other half come because they have seen how Seventh-day Adventists are committed to the peace and well-being of this community. This active church also connects with young minds. Every week, the church takes in some 200 children for after-school care and tutoring. The children are served a daily meal. Many parents and children benefit from this free service provided by volunteers from the church and from the community.
The children are doing better in school because of the activities of this church. The government school principal has expressed his gratitude to the Adventist Church, even at public events.
We hope everyone will come to know God. We make public invitations for those who want to know more about us. We organize small groups to discuss the Bible with those who are interested. I like these activities. We are following Jesus' method. We're building relationships, identifying needs, and trying to help people. Then we're guiding them to God.
I'm a builder by profession, and after the wooden church collapsed, we dreamed of building God a new house for worship. Miraculously, God intervened to give us the land and the funds. Currently, 20 people are studying the Bible, and 2 of them are ready for baptism. We work hard to help those in need. In my spare time, I assist the less privileged to have their own house. I hope someday they will see the love of God through me, as we saw God's love through the Adventists. I want to thank the volunteer pioneers and church planters who came here.
Watch this and other mission stories online by visiting adventistmission.org, then click on videos at the top.
And finally, for today's episode, let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history.
This week, leaders of the Adventist Church speak out against spiritualism.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. This week in 1853, the Seventh-day Sabbath-keeping former Millerites began to grapple with spiritualism. Their unofficial leader was James White, who you see here, a powerful preacher, husband of the prophet Ellen White, and editor of the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald, the weekly paper that bound the fledgling movement together, still published today as the Adventist Review. In the August 4, 1853 issue of the Review, there appeared an article by James White on spiritualism. He declared, "The time has come that the Review should expound those prophecies that refer to those manifestations, i.e. of spiritualism." A series of articles followed throughout August and September of 1853 on the dangers of spiritualism and its place in end-time prophecies, which is still relevant because in the 21st century, belief that the dead can communicate with the living is widespread, not just in society, but even within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The founders of our movement insightfully identified spiritualism as a threat 167 years ago this week. On August 8, 1972, the creation of the Mozambique Union Mission was authorized. The Adventist message first reached what was then the Portuguese colony of Mozambique in 1907, after American missionary Sam Konigmarker founded the Matandani Mission Station. Now, it was across the border in British Central Africa, but the mission school attracted students from Mozambique who were converted, and a strong indigenous movement resulted. Eventually, in the 1930s, missionaries followed, and in 1957, the mission stations in Mozambique were organized into a separate Portuguese East African mission. And in 1972, the General Conference appointed a committee made up of representatives from that mission, from the Euro-Africa Division and the GC, which visited Mozambique. And on August 8, 48 years ago this week, they voted to recommend the creation of the Mozambique Union Mission, which formally came into existence on New Year's Day 1973. As of June 30, 2020, the Mozambique Union reports a membership of 372,000. You can read about the church in Mozambique in the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists at encyclopedia.adventist.org. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the Global Seventh-day Adventist Church.
We'd love to hear from you. Send us your feedback and tell us how your church is making a difference in its community.
Be sure to capture plenty of video footage and videos. Then write up a summary of the event's important details, and feel free to send full video reports as well.
You can reach us by sending an email to annvideo11@gmail.com.
Before we say goodbye, here's some good news from the book of 2 John chapter 2, verses 8 and 9.
The passage says, "Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teaching of Christ does not have God. Whoever continues in the teaching has both the Father and the Son."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit Adventist.news for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.